In this video, I'm going to give you 6 tips that might help you choose the right career. Point 1, you want to define what a career actually is. A lot of times people get paralyzed when they feel the pressure to choose a career to get into because they're putting too much pressure on what a career is meant to be. So I believe that there's 3 big words that often get confused with one another. There's a job, a career, and a calling. Essentially, a job is something that you do to make money. And a job is really good. That's not a bad thing. Making money is biblical, and we all need to provide for ourselves and for our families. A calling, however, is when you have a spiritual gift that God uses to benefit the needs of other people. Finally, a career is a field that you are getting into with the hopes of advancing over time, getting special training in, and making more money as your life goes on. So a career should be different than a job, but it's also not a calling. So tip number 1, if you ask too much of a career, you'll be paralyzed. If you want it to be your calling, it's gonna be too much pressure to pick this career that's gonna fulfill all your hopes and dreams. A career is really not meant for that purpose. So when you're deciding on what career to choose, keep that in mind. Tip number 2, you wanna choose your life goals first, and don't choose your life goals around your career. In other words, a lot of people end up choosing a career first and then shaping the goals in their life around their career and saying, hey, what kind of lifestyle will fit this career that I have chosen? I believe that you're going to be a lot more successful and you're going to honor God a lot more in your life by first defining what life goals do I have for myself, and then choosing a career that fits the goals that you have, rather than having to limit your lifestyle and the things you want to accomplish in your life because you chose a certain career that will control so much of your time or, dictate where you live and things like that. So for example, if you really want to be a doctor and you become a doctor after all these years of study, but then you realize, wait a minute, I have to work a lot more than 40 hours a week. My vacation time is limited. That lifestyle that you want doesn't really fit well with the career of being a doctor. Now, if you like working all those hours and you're fine with the lifestyle that you were required to be a successful doctor, then by all means, that's great. I'm not saying which lifestyle is better. I'm just saying that when you're choosing a career, define what goals you have for your life and your lifestyle first, and how you want to honor God in your life, and then choose a career that fits that. Number 3, choose a career that's realistic in the marketplace. I think a lot of times nowadays, younger people grow up hearing the advice, just follow your dreams, do what you are passionate about. And of course, that's true. We should all have the freedom and the guts, so to speak, to go follow our dreams. Like, that's a really good message, but it should also be balanced with some practical, realistic advice. Otherwise, you might struggle making money and you might be unemployed for large parts of your life if you just follow your dreams. So a lot of times people go to school, go to college, learn about things that they really enjoy, but those things don't necessarily translate to the marketplace. And again, you have to define what a career actually is. A career is a field of study that is specifically meant to help you gain money, and that will allow you to advance in that field. So you have to be realistic about the marketplace. Don't just follow your dreams, or don't just look at what your desires are. Look at the marketplace around you, look at the world around you, and say, where is a field that produces the kind of income that I would want, that also fits the talents and skills that I have, rather than just focusing on your desire. You want to have a healthy balance of both. It says in Proverbs 13:11, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. So the Bible puts an emphasis on practicality when it comes to our jobs, our careers, and making money. Number 4 is don't underestimate the importance of making money, but don't be a lover of money either. One verse that is constantly misquoted and misunderstood is 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. In that verse, it says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs." So clearly, loving money is inappropriate for Christians, and that is not something that we should be doing. We should not be worshipers of money. However, that verse does not say you should hate money. That verse does not say that you should run from money. It says you should not love it. Money is simply a tool that God gives us to use for His kingdom and to accomplish the purposes and plans that He has for our life. It's a tool that we need to use wisely. And so when you choose a career, don't think you're being extra spiritual or you get all these extra points by not thinking about money at all. A career, again, is supposed to be about providing for yourself and others, because that's a biblical role for us to play. God gives us responsibilities to provide for ourselves in healthy ways. God is the one who provides through this career and through our work efforts, but nonetheless, God does call us to work hard for the things that we need in our life. Number 5 is probably the most practical tip of these 6 tips, and it's that ideally, in my opinion, it's smarter to develop some hard skills earlier in life and then focus on developing your soft skills as you get older. If you're not familiar with these terms, hard skills are specific skill sets that you learn that are measurable and specific, such as like welding or nursing or accounting or knowing how to create a blueprint, running a tow motor, being a paramedic, where you have these specific skill sets that are tangible and measurable. Soft skills are a lot harder to measure. They're things like communication, leadership, strategizing. So the reason I say that you should develop some hard skills first and then work on soft skills is because hard skills are a lot more predictable for the marketplace. You have a lot better idea of, okay, if I know how to do this specific skill, I can generally assume that can get this type of job making this type of money. And it's really good to have that when you're younger, because you can have a lot more security in your job. And even later on in life, like maybe say you move up, but then for something happens, you leave, you get fired, you still have those hard skills to fall back on that are a lot more predictable to find a job with. Soft skills, on the other hand, are a lot harder to find jobs that pay you for those jobs. Leadership, strategizing. When you're younger, it's hard to find a job that's going to utilize those skill sets, because a lot of times a company or an organization or a ministry will be looking for someone with some maturity and job experience to go along with those skills. However, I'm not saying don't focus on soft skills. I'm just saying that you want to develop hard skills first. Soft skills, while they may be harder to find a job up front, also have a lot bigger capability of growth, of impact, and of making money. So the soft skills are more of a risk, but there's also a greater gain. So for example, getting out of college, you may really want to be the CEO and run the company, but realistically that's probably not going to happen. But that company probably will hire you as an engineer, and you have these hard skills and you learned how to be an engineer and you get hired. Over the years, you become the manager, you get more responsibility, and maybe 10, 20 years down the line, you've developed the soft skills and leadership and strategizing to actually run the company then. I also think it's interesting when you look at a lot of New Testament Bible characters such as Jesus, Paul, and many of the disciples, like Peter and his brother Andrew, they had hard skills when they were younger. For example, it says in Mark 6 verse 3, talking about Jesus, it says, is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and then he lists his brothers and his family. So my point is, Jesus was a carpenter before he started his public ministry. Or, for example, Paul, later in ministry, he needed to produce some income for himself, and he fell back onto the hard skills that he had developed earlier in life. It says in Acts 18:2-3, and he went to see them, and because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them and worked, for they were tent makers by trade. Paul was a tent maker. And of course, most of you probably know the disciples were fishermen before they started their ministry with Jesus, and they often resorted back to that later on in life. Lastly, point 6, you want to trust God when you're choosing a career, but also be open to changing your choice later on in life. The reason I say this is because sometimes we get so paralyzed when we're choosing a career because we feel like it's so final. What you have to do in life and when choosing a career is do your best to follow God in the moment, and eventually you just have to start moving forward even if you're not 100% sure on what's going to happen next. But when you trust the sovereignty of God, you can know that, you know what, even if I didn't do it perfectly, or even if it doesn't work out, God still has a plan, and he can show me then what I should do then. So just know that even if God really does tell you to choose this certain career, it's possible that later in life he leads you to choose another career or makes a little bit of a change there. So long story short, trust God in the moment and move forward after you've done your best to consider what the Word of God says and you're walking in the Spirit. But also just know that you can change later on if God leads you to do that. It might be difficult, it might be hard, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Well, again, I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. I hope you enjoyed this content. And if you did, give it a thumbs up and maybe even share it with your friends. You never know who might need some Christian career advice. It might be really helpful to somebody else. Well, thanks for watching, and God bless.